Hi everyone. Um, I'm Sejal from PLFIF. So PLFIF is basically Protocol Labs is an innovation network, and they have multiple funds. You may have heard of Filecoin. It's a decentralized storage network, and Protocol Labs has a Filecoin Impact Fund, which is supposed to deploy capital in the Filecoin network. And I work in PLFIF, so I'm going to talk about Filecoin Impact Fund and what are the things we are doing, how we want to make some changes, what does evaluation look like, what does sort of allocation looks like right now. And I have David Dow with me from PL as well. So we will talk, he'll talk later about how some of the experiments he's doing are going to be applied to this fund. Yeah, so it's the simple general. So how do we ensure that the most important work for the ecosystem gets the support it deserves, not just once, but continuously and at scale? So I think everyone knows what public goods are. I don't want to go over this, but essentially the shared goods, which everyone benefits from, but nobody really, cares much about. So it's basically non-excludable, non-rivalrous, and we need to figure out ways to actually effectively fund those. Yeah, I just want to go a little bit over history of how Protocol Labs has previously funded. For example, IPFS and libp2p, which are the dependencies for Filecoin, which Protocol Labs was actually funding through the traditional grant programs from 2014 to 2017. And then 2017 to 2020, it was continuously funding it, and with EF and Parity and others joining, for example, funding libp2p. And then from 2022 to actually 2025, Filecoin Foundation was set up. Then they started running the grants programs. Protocol Labs also funding the teams and projects, and many other ecosystem participants funding specific projects. So we have specific projects with focus areas, and then some pockets are also privately funded, but there is a large sort of shared infrastructure that is funded through different entities. And then we also saw, the reason I added Web3 PGF explosion is Protocol Labs has played big role in supporting Gitcoin and FTC, hypercerts, and we have seen other mechanisms like deep funding, DeepGov, also in the Web3 ecosystem that has come that Filecoin hasn't really implemented or experimented with. But one of the goals is to really figure out how we can apply that to PGF now that we have this fund set up, which is funded by Protocol Labs. So I want to go straight into how do we want to do PGF long term. Like I mentioned, Filecoin has done the program quite traditionally. We had different focus areas. We had run grants program, right, like any traditional organization. But we are making massive changes on what that could look like in future. So I just want to share some of the things we are doing. But before getting into the current state, I just want to share what the current PGF network looks like, right? So initially, what happened was FF and PL, if you can see on the right, these are directly the projects that were getting funded, right? So these were mostly the direct grants that happened. And then, of course, we have SPs, the miners and applications and some L2s. Then PL set up PLFIF, which is an entity, which started funding the groups, right? And then of course, like I said, we had traditional ways of funding things, but then we wanted to set up mechanisms and dedicated mechanisms that the funding flows through, as opposed to these entities directly funding the projects, right? So we had Phil Retro PGF that was set up thanks to Optimism, inspired by Optimism. We set up badge holder voting. Round 1 and 2 a huge success. Round 3 is currently happening. Of course, we need strong impact evaluation. So we had just Retro PGF as one program, but then we set up last year Pro PGF, which is a milestone-based funding program. Of course, when we were setting it up, we had questions like it must be on-chain, it must be decentralized, which means it should have like key stakeholders or community deciding who gets funding. And then, of course, things like, do we need a legal entity? Like, it's a classic example of how, or maybe not classic, but like how a traditional way of giving grants can move to on-chain, right? We literally went through the whole thing, and we set up this last year, right? So yeah, Enfill PGF is basically a treasury that is now, we have set up like a Cayman Foundation, and we have a treasury that is actually going to fund Retro PGF and Pro PGF. So all the funds that not just flow through Filecoin Foundation, but Protocol Labs. And in future, like we have a proposal floating around for some of the block rewards that should go to our treasury. So all of this is going to go to Phil PGF, and from there, the allocation is going to get decided which program the funding should go to, how much should it go to. Pro PGF, Retro PGF, and other programs also. Long-term goal, we haven't made much progress here, but hopefully by the end of the year, next year, I will have more to say on this, which is like, how can Filecoin network fund itself at large scale? Like, that's a big sustainability question that we are still asking, haven't really figured out. We have a proposal, happy to share that, which I said like is getting floated around, which is like, what if a percentage of block rewards is routed to the services, what that would look like, right? So that is one attempt, but we want to figure out what are the on-chain primitives of capital formation so that we are sustainably funding the network, right? So that would be the long-term goal, that network actually routes the funding to this PGF, which further goes to the programs. Yeah, and like I mentioned, ProPGF last year we set up, it's a milestone-based funding program, proactively funds infrastructure projects, and we have run 2 batches distributed over $5 million. We run it every 6 months. We had 102 projects applied, which is crazy, but we funded 16 projects because we only focused on infrastructure. So you can imagine bringing down from 102 to 16 was obviously like a massive thing. And then, of course, like I already mentioned, Retro PGF, badge holder voting, distributed over $3 million. It's going since 2024. Yeah, so OSO, Open Source Observer, is one of the impact evaluation teams. I just wanted to give a shout out to them. We recently partnered with them, so as you can imagine, the amount of funding that is flowing is very significant. So what is the, how are you doing how are we doing the evaluation? How do we know what to fund? How do we know if a mechanism is really working or not, right? Like, I think that pillar is extremely important, but there is so many layers and so much, it's a data question on how you want to go about evaluating. So we partnered with OSO. So I just wanted to quickly share what we are doing. So one of the things we're doing is like ProPGF, we fund infrastructure projects, right? So network, like any network, has some objectives, which can be broken down into KPIs, into metrics, right? There are certain entities that directly hit those KPIs, directly hit those metrics, but for them to be able to hit those, or for them to be able to like grow the network, they are dependent on obviously infrastructure or dependencies, right, that we fund through the program. To better understand what those dependencies are, which are more critical, which are less critical, which are more useful, which are less useful, we have started this initiative where we are mapping these dependencies. And trust me, it's not easy in Filecoin because we have to manually do it. Because these are dependencies, not just like or repos, it's teams, it's BD teams, it's like different, it's very subjective. So, but we are working on it. So this is something that it looks like. We have some past funding data, it will have the programs, it will have the grants, and then it will have dependencies that it will show. It will actually, if you see in the right corner, that we have started to map the infra dependencies. So what we are doing is like we are actually going to these teams that are funded and that directly contribute to the objectives and giving them, and asking them, okay, which are the dependencies, how they categorize it, which are critical, which are not critical, and then we further help them give points to it, so we understand the importance of those dependencies that will ultimately feed to what gets funded, right? So it's an experiment to see how it works. This is something we have formalized, and this is an app that we created, and we are starting to do this with teams that are funded and teams that are like affecting the objectives, right? So hopefully we have these dependencies in place, which will further help us obviously define our programs, what gets funded. So yeah, some of the things like our current focus is getting the remaining funding data, of course, sourcing on-chain data, get dependency impact ratings. We have philpgf.io, which everything will be available there. So if you want to just check out, you can check that out. And then, of course, we want to measure the ROI. We are figuring out how we can monitor projects continuously and then ask some strategic questions. Yeah, so another thing is massive program, too many things happening. So I think it's very understood that humanly it's not possible to do it. Now, how do we build the AI layer for PGF? So I want to invite David on some of the experiments he's doing that we think we can implement in the fund.
Thank you so much, Sejal. I think public goods funding is at a very critical stage. Right now, we all feel it, that there's a paradigm shift happening. The last couple of years, we experienced that the bottleneck of a lot of the effectiveness of public goods funding, understanding the return of investment, being really good in impact evaluation, writing really good proposals, depends and it's bottlenecked by human capacity. The OpEx costs, right, like that is human time, and also the lack of impact evaluation, because we humans just don't have the ability to compute, search the internet. And so we believe that there is a significant opportunity here. And the first thing that will fall as a big grand challenge in the public goods funding space is the impact evaluation challenge. And we believe there are two layers that are needed for this. One is an agentic data layer that is open for every AI agent to read out without the need of like requesting API access, API codes. And we believe that this is happening through hypercerts. Hypercerts is a protocol that has been existing for 4 years now, but it's recently relaunched as a agentic first data layer built on AD protocol. So you can check out the website. It's amazing. You can just literally give it to your coding agent, like check out hyperscan.dev/agents. It will build out the whole layer, and it will be able to basically query every single record that has been stored in the hypercerts layer, and the agent is able to basically search all the data through. And on top of that data layer, that's strategy number one, build an agent-first data layer. Strategy number two is then build a digital twin that is able to read all of that data. And so this is Simocracy. This is very cutting-edge research right now at PLR&D. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create digital twins of shareholders, of batch holders, of proposal people. And this is a really exciting experiment that, let's see if I can show a live demo of this, because I think it will be really worth for you guys to check this out. So we're running right now a 6-month experiment right now in the Frontier Tower in San Francisco. And let me just log in. So you can just log in here with the HyperCerts account. So it's very smooth. It's like a @proto login. Sign in, and then it will link you to the OAuth of @proto. And now you log in. Never save this, of course. So you check out the Frontier Tower, and what you see here, this is a beautiful building in San Francisco that has an Ethereum floor on the 12th, but every single floor here is a different kind of topic. So 14 is human flourishing, 11 is longevity, floor 9 is AI. And so all these floor leads have autonomous decision making on their floor. So it's like a huge college dorm. And we did an experiment of $15,000 where we gave $10,000 to each floor lead at their disposal to do whatever they want, however they want to distribute it. And we wanted to understand what mechanisms are they doing, what is the incentive, and to no surprise, dictatorship of spending, dictatorship with AI consultancy, apparently. And here, this is democracy. So most of the people just like, okay, I'll use to pay my membership fee of the tower. I don't want to dispose it. When we asked them to report the data on hypercerts, they were angry. They were like, no, I don't want to show it. And so, yeah, not phase one is basically creating the human baseline of funding. What happens when you give them the money? And phase two is then we kept $5,000 in an agentic treasury here, and we gave this money then to the digital twin representation. And how we created that is basically, you can go to My Sims, you can create like your own digital twin. You usually do this through an interview. So you talk to it in the platform, the way you speak. There's like an 11 Labs API. And then it extracts your soul.md, your core beliefs of funding, and also your speaking style. So it becomes like kind of like a digital twin. And that's a 15-minute interview is very surprisingly effective to create a digital twin. I have Kevin Owoki somewhere here. Let me grab him. So this is OwokiBot, 15-minute interview with Owoki. Hi, do you like public goods? And then Owoki will speak in his usual style on like public good stuff, right? So what can we do with these digital twins? They have infinite compute and infinite patience. Imagine like a batch holder system that has infinite patience. What can you do? Well, you can evaluate these proposals at an unprecedented scale. And there's something called the S process, which is a humongously effective but cognitively expensive thing to do. Basically, instead of asking how much should each project get in money, what's the marginal utility increase like for every single dollar that every project gets? So you have to calculate like marginal curves. And this is humanly not possible. There's only one fund in the world that does this from the Skype founder. But AI agents can just literally go through every single proposal and estimate these value curves for every single project. And then we can run an optimizer for all these value curves, and this will then give us like a result of how effectively the funds should be distributed. So this is just an idea of what happens if suddenly you're not capacity constrained anymore, you have infinite compute, and you can do impact evaluation at a large scale. So these are like experiments that we're really excited about: AI-assisted, AI-native impact evaluation, AI-native public goods funding. And so if you're interested in this, let us know. We're working on this intersection at PLR&D on crypto and economic systems. And I think, yeah, that's just a sneak peek of what we're working on. Thank you so much.
One thing I just want to say is like a lot of these experiments that we are doing, like I said, our program is fairly new, so we hope that a lot of it can be applied to Pro PGF, Retro PGF, the programs we are running, and yeah. If any questions, happy to answer. Great, thank you.
Oh, there's one question. There's one question.
Yeah, it's not really on the topic, but do you have any news about the Protocol Lab hackathon and how it went?
So we've done PL Genesis, or we were also sponsoring, I think, Synthesis. Which one are you talking about? PL Genesis. Actually, protocol network is quite large, so it has different corners. So, but I can definitely try connect you to the right person. Sabine is the person who leads that. So happy to make a connection there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's in the judging phase right now. So.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Going back to Simocracy, if I understand correctly, the agents can use basically any decision-making process, and the S-curve process is just one example which plays to their strengths. What are some other decision-making processes which are uniquely suited for Simocracy, which may not be accessible to humans?
Yeah. So imagine anything that is highly mathematical and requires like compute or like potential understanding of statistics. So estimating probability of success, for example, based on prior data. You can also create curves that are, so the S process has a simplified marginal utility estimation of every project, but you can also estimate the value of projects differently. You can estimate them through, for example, topic-wise, like this is very aligned to, imagine you're a funder and you care about infrastructure. And then there's another funder that cares about community preferences, right? You can estimate every project according to an importance of like 20 topics, something that a human would fall asleep after 3. You're like, oh, okay, it's enough. I don't want to do more than like 3. But an AI agent can estimate it at every single axis, every single category, over like hundreds of topics and categories. And then you can run like a mathematical optimizer on each of them. Or you can run another AI agent on this. And so we call this AI-assisted evaluation. And we do not want to give up human agency. So ultimately, the human at the end is the one that is the decision maker. But we do believe that this just opens up a whole new level of like decision making that is not possible with constrained cognitive capacity. Yes. Oh, we can answer any questions afterwards. Yeah.